Hello, everybody. Welcome to a special episode of your Deprogrammed podcast.
My name is Jason Roberts, aka Conquest.
And I'm Apparicio, aka Coach Apparicio.
And you're here for a very, very, very special version of your regularly scheduled programming.
Absolutely.
We won't say because we don't want to kill her aircraft. We don't want to do that. Don't we?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, we probably don't kill the singing. Probably no singing today.
Yeah. We're not going to sing. We're going to spare her eardrum. But for those of you who are unfamiliar, we have in the building a dear friend of mine, and she is amazing at what she does, but I'm going to let her put the spotlight on herself because I brag about her all the time. Mm-hmm. We have Amickoleh here with us today. Amickoleh, clap it up.
Hello, beautiful people.
Hello. Pleasure having you.
Yes, and we are so honored to have you here on the podcast with us. And Amickoleh, tell the people a little bit more about yourself. So, about on the CUSP Wellness, about your spiritual journey, and any other expertise you want to start off with. Let's just start there.
Sure. Yes. So my name is Amickoleh Imani. I am a transformational guide, educator around energetic wellness, soul medicine, and also a multifaceted creative. So I have a background in photography, fashion design, music, the singer-songwriter, and still practicing music in my own way. And just so many other things. I also write poetry and just just self-expression, soul expression like that. So whatever medium format that comes through, I just allow myself as much as possible to explore those mediums. And my journey essentially started, my background, like I said, is in fashion design. And I went through a spiritual awakening in the very end of 2018, like December of 2018. I listened to this podcast and there was this intuitive guide on there. She was talking about energy as currency. And I was listening to this podcast and it was just like, I was just enthralled about how she was speaking about her life and just the things that she had gone through and like where she was in her journey. And I was like, what is she doing? I need to be doing all of that because my life doesn't look or sound anything like that. Like I'm living in New York at this time, working 2 jobs, a full-time and a hustling on the side. Like I was just like tired and just trying to figure out like, what am I doing all this for essentially? And that led me down the path of like really tapping into my purpose. What am I here on this planet for? What am I meant to be doing? I've always had very big dreams, big goals, big aspirations. I thought my claim to fame, if you will, was going to be through music. That was always like my focus, essentially like, how do I get into the spotlight? How do I become a professional musician and all of that? And, but this spiritual awakening just like completely cracked me open. And it just seemed like all of my creative desires, all of the different things that I was striving for through my creative pursuits, not that they didn't feel as important, but I started to understand that my striving for this high level, which is still something that I think that's just like very ingrained in me. Like I'm just a very high achieving person. But I got to the root of like, what's underneath that striving for? Like, what are we trying to reach to? What are we trying to get to? Like, what's the impetus behind all of this? Like desire to like get here, be here, do this, have that. And that essentially took me on a wild ride of healing. And so that way I could be creating a reality, what I like to call now is like reality design, like designing a reality that actually fills my soul and feeds my soul and feels nourishing. Because we hear so many stories about people who have big goals, big dreams, and they get them, and then they feel empty, they feel depressed, they feel all these things. They don't feel satisfied and satiated by the endeavors and their pursuits. And I wanted to make sure that I didn't follow that path because I knew I had such a drive. I wanted to make sure that the things that I was passionate about were really coming from a soul aligned place and like from authenticity and not from trauma, not trying to prove people from high school wrong or people from this, that, and the third who said X, Y, Z and and I'll show them, like it just had to just let all of that go and start doing things for myself.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's a little nutshell.
That's a powerful origin story. Are you sure you're not a Marvel superhero?
We are all superheroes. Okay. We're all on our hero's journey.
We love that. Mm-hmm. We love that. So we're going to take a quick pause. I'm going to transfer you over to the computer. Let's switch over to the computer and we're going to start off right here. Okay. Okay. So Amickoleh just left off with her origin story.
Yeah.
Which I swear she is a superhero, but then she beautifully said that we are all superheroes. Mm-hmm. So Mickey, walk us through on the cusp wellness, because you're very modest about your business. I mean, you have been friends for a while, but I think that people should know how much, not only years you put into your expertise, but how much study, how much intent went into forming on the cusp wellness and what you do with your clients. So can you give us a little bit of background on that?
Yes. So I started on the cusp wellness back in 2021. And I had, like I shared, 2019, the end of 2018 came into the spiritual awakening. All of 2019 was like really going deep into self healing, doing all the things to just get more clear about who I am authentically, peeling back all the layers, all the false identities, all of that. And so when we went into the pandemic and everything shut down, I got laid off from everything that I was doing. I left the fashion industry right before the pandemic. Hallelujah. Thank you, God. I'm always like, that was my intuition right then and there, because I was in a place that I was not really happy, a company that I was not happy with. I quit, no plan, nothing backed up. I had like a couple grand in savings. I was like, I don't know, we're going to figure it out. And so I just freelanced for a few months, not a few years, a few months. And then the pandemic happened, right? So now we're locked in. We're all inside. We're trying to figure out what the heck to do with our times, with ourselves, with our lives. And because I had built up such a practice and such, like you said, such an intensity around just getting to know myself, getting to get as much information as I could pull from myself, from my soul, from, I was into all the things, meditation, I was getting Reiki, I like anything that could tell me about me and just give me more clarity about who I am. I dove into it. Human design, which is coming onto the scene, everything, astrology, everybody. And so we're in the pandemic, and at the end of the pandemic, I just felt like a very strong calling to start a podcast. And so I started a podcast called On the Cusp of Something Beautiful. And I was just like, I'm just going to talk about my journey, just talk about spirituality, just talk about the things that I'm interested in. And with that seed of inspiration, I then felt called to start a course, to create a course, figure out a way to like format everything that you've been experiencing, that you've done, that you've learned, to teach other people. Because when I first started learning about like following your intuition and like, all of that, and just peeling back all these different layers of like religion and Christianity and all of that, and just really getting like super clear on who my soul was, intuition was like one of the first things that came through, of like learning how to follow your intuition. Like that's how you're going to be able to, have that beautiful, magical life that I was listening to this intuitive guide talking about, going through. She was following her intuition. She was learning to trust it. And she was getting receiving these really cool opportunities and outcomes in her reality. And I was like, well, that's what I got to do. I just got to follow my intuition. I got to figure out how to do that. But I remember learning more about what that looks like and the different layers of like intuitive gifts and all of that. And I was just like, how come more people don't know this? Like everybody should be learning about this. Like if this is what's going to like liberate us and like get us on purpose and, make us more whole human beings, I don't understand like why this isn't a bigger thing. I just couldn't figure out like how come this isn't a bigger topic. Yep. And so that's what I felt called to do. So I created a course called Activate Your Soul. And that was essentially like the impetus of my business. I thought it was going to be the podcast, because people have built businesses around the podcast before and are still doing it currently to this day, right? It's like, that's going to be the thing. But then the course came through and I was like, oh no, the course is that. This is what it's going to be. So I came across this beautiful soul named Danielle Leslie, who teaches people how to create courses based off of their learned experience and what they know, and what they're great at, right? And so I did that, put my course together, followed her methodology on like getting people to sign up for the course. I got my first, paid customer. And it was not funny, but like, I think one of my really first tests of like, okay, you're going to follow this like intuitive lifestyle. Like, let's see if you're really going to follow it. Right. And I get the download to offer the course to my mom. And I said, Spirit, now y'all know this woman ain't about to take this course. And it's all about like energetic medicine and like all this stuff. And like, she was not with it at the time, like this whole, we had this whole conversation, I'll call it, around like what I had been studying and practicing. Like she just didn't understand it fully yet. So when Spirit was like, offer it to her, I was like, let me think about this. I'm gonna sit on this for a couple of days, because I know y'all know my mama and that's not it,
right,
but
right, yeah.
I finally, she called me one day, man. Okay.
Yeah.
So she called me one day And she calls me to tell me about like, oh my God, I just took this workshop, took this 3-day, one of those challenges, whatever. And there was a meditation, there was this, and I saw all these colors, and I was standing in the middle of the ocean, and I was X, Y, and Z, da, 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 da. And she was like, I just want to say, I'm so sorry. I didn't understand what you were doing, what you were talking about. She was like, but I get it now. I understand. And I'm on the phone like, who is this? Like,
wow, living
so
in your purpose when your mom comes around, and you're the first
man.
producer.
So I tell her, I'm like, hey, I've been working on this course. I was like, Spirit dropped it on my heart to share it with you for free. You know, I was like, would you be interested in taking it? And she was like, oh my God, yes, I'll take it. Send me whatever you need to send me. Like, I'll sign up. I'll be there, you know. And that the next week, I got my first paid client. And I was like, see, this is why you got to follow the guidance. You got to follow the intuition, right? You got to follow those nudges. So that's what really got my course going. And I offered it a few more times, like one-on-one kind of situations. And I've been able to like kind of, I was building on it from there. Every time I would walk through another person through the course, I'd add this, add that. Oh, okay, let me add this. I just learned because I follow this work, this medicine, energetic medicine, the chakras. That's what I teach in the course, is teaching people about the chakra system and empowering them to learn more about the chakras, because this is access to energy that you can tap into any day, anytime, any whatever, you know what I mean? So the more you learn about these energetic points, that you know how, then you can also learn about their symptoms when they're in balance, when they're in alignment. And that's how I started healing myself. I'm like, okay, well, let's go, you know, what does the root chakra do? Okay, that has to do with like physical safety and stability and security. And like, okay, well, where has that been a little off in my life, or where is it off in my life right now? And just anytime I had a situation or experience that I was wanting to get to the root of, I looked to see which chakra center does this particular experience or emotional pattern or mental pattern or whatever the case may be, like where is it connected to? And I just kind of started peeling back the layers like that of just my own personal path and journey. And everything I teach comes from lived experience, comes from my spirit, comes from my soul, comes from, you know, the people that I study and that I feel called or aligned and attracted to learning from. And it's been a consistent evolution of my own work, and being able to, I also work one-on-one with clients as well. And so I'm able to sometimes, or not sometimes, but I'm able to most times pull in some of these pieces, you know, talking about, you know, if I'm working with a client, they have a lot of inner child trauma and woundings, you know, that I'm, you know, sharing them with them about, like, you know, well, that's a sacral chakra wound, and the sacral chakra, you know, supports us with our creativity and our sexuality, also shadow work, also those inner child pieces. So if you're having a lot of kind of inner child flare-ups or tantrums or just emotions that you maybe are not used to expressing or never had the space to express, we need to take a look at some of like your childhood points and like, where were these kind of where are some of these situations and occurrences happening, you know, because until we heal these points, these trauma points, they ripple out into our reality. So that's why we see, you know, grown ass adults acting like children. It's because their inner child is wounded, and that's what's flaring up. That's the mentality. That's the age that they've been stuck in when it comes to that particular category or topic or experience. So that's what they're playing out, right? And so it takes a lot of self-awareness. It takes discipline, devotion, strength, courage, all the things, you know, a willingness to really allow yourself to fall apart, if you will, and then to be able to put yourself back together again, but with truth, with purpose, with things that feel more alignment. So that's why where the authenticity piece comes into play as well. I feel like, you know, I do a lot of different practices and things like the exercises with my clients. But at the end of the day, essentially what I'm cracking them open to is like their authenticity, which comes through their intuition, which comes through their soul.
Amickoleh, I have a question for you. In the course of you doing the podcast, what did you necessarily learn about yourself in doing the podcast? Because obviously a lot of your journey has trickled into one thing, into another thing, which trickled into another thing, and you're a multi-hyphen, as you previously stated. So I was wondering, what about the podcast taught you things about yourself, and what did it teach you about your audience? And also, with those revelations and with those, with that information gained, how did it help you build your course?
Okay, so what did the podcast teach me about myself? Where did the podcast teach me about myself? I felt like it taught me to just share my story, to trust the stories that were wanting to come through, to trust the topics that were wanting to come through, to start to pay attention to what kinds of conversations I wanted to have and wanted to talk about. And who did I want to have those conversations with? A lot of my first guests, excuse me, were like friends, you know? And so just kind of starting with those safe spaces, those safe people. And then of course, eventually I wanted to branch out to, well, look at this person's work. I like what they're doing. I don't know this person, but I want to reach out to them and see if they'd be interested in being a guest, you know? So like that outreach and putting yourself out there and, excuse me, and being okay with that, being okay if they didn't respond, if they do respond. And I've been able to create some really amazing friendships by doing that, reaching out to people I had no idea who they were, right? And we're still, you know, we still are in connection with each other to this day. So that was one thing that it taught me. One thing it continues to teach me is how medicinal conversations can be. Spirit put it on my heart one day of like, you know, this podcast is designed to, they said, alchemical conversations. It's designed to foster alchemical conversations that when you hear these two people having this discussion about this topic, it transforms something within the listener, it transforms something within even the two people having the discussion as well. And that in and of itself is a form of healing, you know? And so that was a really powerful lesson and one that I still integrate to this day. I feel like what it taught me about my audience, I feel like it taught me that they're also like a bit introverted, kind of like me. I feel like nowadays I definitely am more of an ambivert. I think old me, definitely introvert. But yeah, I definitely think that they're also a bit shy like me. You know, they listen to the show and then there's usually like this one specific moment, this one specific episode or this one connection point. They'll be like, you know what, I've been listening to your show. I'm like, I really like the episodes you did X, Y, and Z. No clue. And I'm like, thank you. I didn't even know that you listened to the show, but thank you, you know? And so that was what motivates me and keeps me going. Cause you know, especially in the podcasting space, sometimes it kind of takes a little second for the momentum and the traction to gain. But I think it's also important to not, another lesson I've really have had to learn is to not discount or discredit those smaller numbers. You know, because even if I can transform one person's life in my community or my network, you know, that is just as impactful as transforming 10 or 100 listeners or 1,000 or 10,000, you know, because the ripple effect of one person is infinite. I don't even know how far that goes out, you know? So I think, you know, really getting out of, you know, the spiritual path and journey really challenges you to get out of the numbers and out of the 3D and out of what you can see and what you can touch and what you can, you know, all of that stuff, because there's so much more happening on the other end of the spectrum that we don't have access to just yet. You know, it may unfold later on down the line. It may not even be meant for us to know about it, but we have to trust that, okay, I've been called to do this podcast, to do this show, to talk about these things. Yes, it's challenging. It's edgy. You know, I've talked about stuff from this podcast that, like, you know, I ain't never told nobody, you know what I mean? But it's like, I know what it feels like to be in a really dark space and to feel like no one understands what I'm going through. No one understands me. And so if my heart is inviting me to speak about a topic that's edgy for me, because I know that is going to reach somebody eventually somewhere down the path, maybe already, maybe not yet, that's going to listen to that conversation or that monologue with me, you know, talking about something that's really tender and really sensitive? Edgy, sensitive. Yeah. Something that's really sensitive. And if they can be seen and heard and felt through my openness and my honesty and my authenticity, and especially if it could save their life to any error, any, you know, inkling or degree or anything like that, where they feel like they can hold on a little bit longer or one more day or one more week, whatever the case may be, it's like, to me, that's worth it. You know what I mean? So it's also taught me to just like trust my voice. And this is like this is an ongoing thing. You know, it's like every new level I meet, of course, I have to go back up the ranks again. You're going to talk about this. What you going to do to what you going to do to get past this resistance? What you going to do to you like, you know, you feel called to do a thing and it's meeting you at that edge and you're like, oh gosh, peeling off another layer and get to the next step, you know, and it's taught me about, you know, this healing journey. I came into the healing space hoping to get fixed. I wanted to get fixed. Just tell me what's wrong with me so I could just be normal, you know, and stop feeling all these feelings and having all these doubts and these insecurities and all the things. And I finally come to a place where it's like, there's no end here. I was in meditation one day and a soul guide of mine, you know, she told me, she was like, the journey never ends, so you got to enjoy the journey, you know. And when I really listened to and felt what she said, I was like, oh, okay, so I can take this pressure off myself to be like, to get fixed and to be perfect, you know. And it's not about perfection; it's about wholeness. And wholeness is a dynamic experience. Is also what I'm realizing. You know, wholeness doesn't mean, okay, we put all the pieces back into the puzzle. The puzzle's made and it's done. And like now it just sits there and we just look at the pretty puzzle, you know?
Trophy case somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I wonder if this really ties into, so I know me and you do similar work together in energy field and space. But for someone like my best friend, Jason, this is a little new agey, a little newer, a little fresher. So I was wondering where you were saying stuff about how people are starting to come into, it's not about getting to the end of your journey, but enjoying the journey. And that's part of the energetic medicine that you teach to your clients. Yes, 100%. And definitely all like, it coincides for sure, because there's a point in your healing journey where you realize like, oh, there's actually nothing wrong with me. I've just gone through traumatic experiences, and the level of consciousness that I had at that time is what shaped and filtered my reality. Now I'm starting to understand and realize that I'm no longer a child. So I do have autonomy. I do have control now. You know, maybe at the time you did not, but now you do, right? So now you have a certain sense of responsibility. And I think sometimes that can be a bit maybe disheartening when you realize it's like, you know, now I have responsibility. This person or this experience, these series of events have shaped and molded me into this version of being that may not be so joyful right now, right? Or comfortable. And now I'm stepping into this level of awareness and awakening where I want to feel better. I would like to be able to look at the world and experience life in a different way. But then you realize, oh, but it's my responsibility to fix that or to change that. And you're like, well, what the hell? Like, I didn't ask to even be going through all this. Like, you know, now it's my responsibility to change it, you know? And so it's like, yeah, it's like, that's part of that emotional maturity, right? Is being able to accept your past, accept your trauma. And then also the purpose piece that's really important, which is what comes with that energetic medicine. Is like, how do we alchemize these trauma points, these triggers, these experiences that have really did a number on us? How do we alchemize that? How do we make, you know, how do we essentially turn our pain into purpose? And so that for me is the most important and potent piece of the puzzle, is that how would you want to help the person that's coming behind you, that's going through the same thing that you've had to navigate, or has gone through the same thing that you've had to navigate? Like, how do we make meaning out of the madness, you know? And to me, it's like, that's how we reclaim our power. That's how we get our power back. It's not about, well, that person didn't, you know, ask me for their forgiveness and X, Y, and Z and da, da, da. It's like that may never come. You know, if you're waiting on somebody else to ask you for their forgiveness, or, you know, like you may never get that, you know? And they may never come into the level of consciousness where they did something wrong to you, you know? And so we don't want to put our power in someone else's hands in order to move on and to progress in life. So the energetic medicine really comes with, how do we source ourselves instead of looking for other people to resource us? How do we tap into our soul? What are the ways? And most of the times that comes through creativity, you know? And I feel like that's why it's so important to be connected and tapped into how we like to express ourselves. How do we like to connect with ourselves? How do we like to tap into ourselves? You know, there are people who paint, it's piano, it's, I don't know, glass blowing, it's accounting, it's, there's medicine in everything. There's soul in everything. There's life in everything. And it's up to us to figure out what does that life look like. And it's okay if it looks different than somebody else's. We can all learn from each other.
Yeah. Listen, there's even some person sitting down and watching some Love is Blind with a tub of ice cream and just laughing at whichever couples make it and which couples don't make it. But no,
listen,
like what you said was so profound, because that word alchemy is very powerful in our space. And, when we learned about it in school, or at least when I learned about it in school, it was this ancient mythological science where, scientists were trying to turn ash into gold and trying to figure out how to get wealthy. But you really start to understand the magic within yourself, I think, when you start to talk about these things like, wow, I really am an alchemist. And when people say, well, what does that mean? It's like, rather than give the pain that I experienced back into the world, I can turn the pain into something meaningful. I could turn the pain into something beneficial for someone else. I could break the trauma cycle. I can break the generation of heartache or mistrust or denial or whatever you or the community is going through. We can be the opposite thing of giving pain, which is alchemizing it. And I think that's very, very important in our space, that people understand just the magic within them. And I love that you tapped on that. Because again, for any listeners here, alchemy is a mythological thing. Sometimes you're just like, what are you talking about? You're talking about getting rich. Like, okay, let's try to make $1, $110. That's also alchemy. Yes, you can turn a dollar into $1,000. But in terms of healing, it really is the magic of a human being. It really is a magic of us identifying ourselves, which goes into our next segment. You also do identity reinvention. So how do you, let's just say I'm one of your clients. How do you start with breaking down my preconceived notions of myself, what I label myself, and then what do you try to get clients to see when they are looking into themselves and trying to identify what makes them them?
Yeah. I feel like the first thing I do is just get a clear understanding of where they feel like they currently are in their journey. How are they seeing themselves right now? And that will tell you a lot. And then you step into, well, if that's not feeling good.
I'm a tree right now.
You said you're a tree?
Yeah, I'm a tree. I identify as a tree. I think I'm in the middle of a forest and
always blossoming.
Always blossoming. But then there's some little invader trees that try to come in and try to, take some sunlight away from me. And I'm like, but I'm the elder tree. Like, why are you trying to take my sunlight away from me? I've been trying to nurture y'all all back to health. And you just sitting here trying to steal some sunlight from me. What about that?
Oh my gosh, you are too funny.
Probably.
I don't know if trees can invade each other. I feel like trees have such a communication style within themselves, especially, with the mycelium. And so I don't know if that could ever happen, but I know there's definitely like plants and animals and things that could come and kind of like, X, Y, and Z kind of step over.
That's up the y'all take my no, you're not allowed. You're not allowed. But no, please continue.
Yeah, you're funny. But yeah, so getting understanding of where they feel like they currently are, where they would like to be. Okay, well, let's say that's no longer a factor. The things that they brought up in the conversation, like where would you want to be? What would feel? What would give you the most sense of relief? What would give you the most sense of joy? What would support you in showing up more authentically, showing up in your truth, and they'll share XYZ thing. I want to have more time for this. I want to be able to do that. I don't want to have to do this anymore. And so just really get into where would you like to, how would you like to authentically show up in the world, in the reality? Take all the formalities, all the societal expectations, the familial expectations, take all that away. What do you actually want? What do you actually desire? How do you want to feel? And it's typically just going back to those really small, that seems so trite, but it's like, that's the medicine right there. It's in the simple, it's in the small, it's in when you strip all these other layers away that create your persona that you over identify with. If you strip all those things away, what's really you? What's your most authentic form of expression? There's nothing wrong with having things and materials, and there's nothing wrong with that. But are they an extension of your most authentic expression? Are they a collection of things that make you feel like, well, this is what validates me to be in the world? And so when we're talking about identity reinvention, we're looking at what aspects of me are ready to die? What parts of me that, yeah, back in the day when I was 20 or 25 or in my early 30s, yeah, I wanted all the things. I wanted the cars, I wanted the clothes, I wanted to be able to X, Y, and Z, da, da, da. And then you get older, you go through some life, you go through some experiences, you start to realize, actually, that I thought I wanted that. I have that, and I'm still not happy. I'm still not feeling fulfilled. I'm still not feeling, in my joy. So, okay, well, what other aspects, what other pieces can we start to bring into the mix? So there's an exchange that takes place, right? So there's the aspect of dying and falling off. And then there's an aspect of growth and new birth and new life coming in. And we want those pieces of new life that are coming in. We want them to be like the most like authentic, like form of your soul's expression and essence. We want them to, light you up, give you joy, bring you joy. We want those to become the spaces and places where you go to resource yourself so that you can step out into the world and be a full and whole and magnetic being, right? And really feel the soul of who you are and express that, amplify that out into the world. So, I think of it, you can think of it like the seasons, there's this time and space where we're growing and we're planting seeds. There's a time for harvesting. There's a time where things die off and, hopefully you've got some reserves and you store it from the abundance and the overflow to kind of hold you in those more leaner seasons, right? Until we get back into spring and we're like, oh, okay. Like, no, there's newness coming. There's freshness coming. And so that's why that's how I like to liken it. Also too, it's just like, we talked about evolution earlier. Like we're always growing. We're always changing and evolving if we allow life to change and evolve us, right? You can choose not to. That's typically when we're going through the most havoc and pain, right? Because we're holding on to that thing that's actually asking us, begging us, pleading. Could you actually let go? Because something better is coming, something bigger is coming. And it's just trusting that ebb and flow. One of my favorite books is called Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. And she talks about the life-death life cycle and how important it is to familiarize ourselves with the life-death life cycle, because there's always going to be a deathing of some sort throughout life. That's just how nature works. It's just how the flow of the natural world is set up, is knowing when to let things go, knowing when to let things die off, but also allowing that to be an opportunity to, okay, well, how can I leverage this? Again, how can I alchemize this? This is giving me space to create myself anew. I'm not going to hold back this time. I'm not going to sugarcoat nothing. I'm not shrinking down. I can still show up in my truth with love and kindness and compassion and be firm and be bold and be, and so it's like, how do you want to utilize this new start, this new beginning? And so the process of reinventing yourself is like, well, if you got to start over, you may not be all the way ground zero, but there's some level of you that has to start over. You might as well come back full force. You might as well come back like more whole, like.
Would you say that how, in your working with clients and helping them kind of like rediscover their identity or find new identity in where they're going in their journey, right? Would you say that a lot of times there's a push and pull or a tug of war between that and societal norms and worldly expectations? Like you said, you mentioned earlier that, you were working a career that eventually you realized that wasn't really serving you. Like I actually remember one afternoon I was traveling back home here and I was on the NJ Trans, and I actually overheard this woman talking about the fact that, man, I just really found my passion in photography. I had an amazing job and I quit. They're having this really intense conversation, and she's really breaking down the whole idea of like, yeah, I didn't know how this was going to go, but I just knew that I really wanted to go this route. And I find that maybe more people probably want to do what she just said, what she mentioned, but people probably think about the fact that, there's security in this space that I'm in. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm such and such age, and at this time, I should be here because that's what society says is the dominant narrative. How do you find people? How do you help people find their way out of that?
Yeah, I am. Those overcoming societal expectations. That's typically like what keeps people holding on for sure. And what at the root of that is fear of being isolated, fear of being alienated. If everyone's, swimming upstream and I'm getting the call to go downstream, it's like, well, why would I want to do that? Everyone's going that way. You know, safety's that way, right? But that's like the invitation, the initiation, if you will, to following your soul's unique path and purpose. It's you are going to have to go a different route, you know. But the lie that we've been fed and told is that, like, well, you're gonna be alone, or it may not even be that we were fed that, but there's an assumption. There's an assumption that I'm going to be iced out, or I may not be able to,
Outcast.
you know. Exactly. I become the outcast. No one's doing this in my family. I'm the only one, you know? And so the truth of the matter is there's actually other people who are also feeling that call, who may already be figuring it out or experimenting or exploring different options, avenues and pathways. And you just have to link up with those people, right? Start joining communities, start like going to meetup circles. You know, got the internet now, so go online and start looking at, okay, who are there people meeting up about this topic? Are there other networking groups that I can go to? Is there like a creative, you know, mixer that I can go to if I want to be around more creatives? It's like really starting to think outside the box. That's what you're getting challenged, is to think outside the box, follow your own path, and then you realize, oh wait, like I'm actually not the only person. I may be the only person in my family. I'm not the only person in the world, you know. And that's where we get to just expand it's that expansion of consciousness. You know, if your whole entire world revolves around your family and your family is all farmers and you're trying to be an entrepreneur, it's like, well, what do you think? You're going to be met with a whole lot of resistance because they want you to be safe. Of course, they want to make sure you're not just out here doing nothing crazy. But you're not doing anything crazy.
Being on your block the whole time and never leaving Newark or New York, or seeing the world. And you think your whole world is we've always been this whole time.
Absolutely.
Yep. So it's just finding that community that, you know, they say that we're in the age of Aquarius, and Aquarians are very big on community and like connecting people from different, you know, we're very, very eclectic, and like we have friends from over this group, that group over here. And so we like to kind of like bring everybody together, and it's, you know, and that can be, even if you're not an Aquarius, you know, your sun sign or whatever, but we all have elements of that, where we want to bridge all of our different aspects of self into our reality, right? We don't want to always have to, well, if I want to hang out and play basketball, I can only play basketball with these people because they're the only people I know that play basketball. You know, well, it's like, well, how do you bring some of those people over here, some of those people over here, some of those people over here, you know, start connecting dots. And then you start to realize, wow, my world is actually a lot bigger than I thought it was.
Absolutely. And even to add on to Jason's example, there was a famous celebrity, I can't remember his name right now, but he did make the rounds when talking about the Palestine versus Israel war. And he was a heart surgeon, actually a very accomplished heart surgeon. And he quit to become a comedian. And
oh, I know who you're talking about.
Speaking of, I can't think of his name right now.
Is it Ken Jong or Ken?
No, Ken Jong.
The guy from The Hangover?
He's another one.
Oh, okay.
Another guy. He got into acting, but people didn't believe that he was an actual doctor doing surgery.
Yeah.
It's so funny. But he was an accomplished heart surgeon. And he became a very accomplished comedic writer. Like he won a couple of awards. I think he won a couple of Oscars and some other things. He was on the TV shows. He's older. I want to say his name's like Basim. It sounds like Basim. But yeah, he echoes a lot of that. The person who did take that leap, because you can only imagine medical field. You know, that comes with everything, right? The status, the security, the 401k, whatever people could think is secure in life, right? Or what we're told is secure, right? And then he was just like, "No, this doesn't make me happy anymore." And you can only imagine, like, the people around him going, like, "Well, what do you mean? Like, comedy? Like, that's the most opposite thing you could think of. Like, what is that?" And he's like, "No, I've done my work here, and I want to do something now that just fulfills me." And I think it just goes back to the point of the person who might even hesitate to make that jump because they're so scared or fearful of taking that leap to say, "Well, this is what gives me all the security," but the security is perceived security. It's the reality.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
As opposed to, you had to start somewhere. You weren't just an accomplished doctor. You start off as an apprentice. You start off in school. That security that you have now wasn't the security you had then. So if you start in comedy, you're just doing the whole path all over again, is how I can only imagine myself. But the difference between someone who lets that fear encapsulate them and stops them and blocks them versus the person who fights past that fear. And I think that goes into another thing that you touch on with your clients as well, which is perceived reality or reality design, right? Like we make the reality that we live in. And a lot of us are kind of even blocked or encapsulated into this box of what we think all of reality is when really it's just yours. And it's whatever your environment is in your community versus, let's give you a broader example, or let's just maybe even change the perception a little bit. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yes. I feel like, even when you were talking about with the job, maybe back in the 1950s, your job was secure. It ain't that secure these days. I don't know if people realize.
If it ever was, my background. My background. I argued if it ever was, girl. If it ever was.
I'm like, you think you're going to have that job today? It got a whole round of layoffs.
Yes. We're dealing with that now with the techs, the AI engineers, and the FedEx laid off a couple thousand people. And it's just like, that's all the jobs that people once upon a time, like you said, used to think were very secure. Now it's up in the air.
Yeah. And I think, it also, it kind of snaps us into reality, because when you have this perceived sense of security, let's say through a job, you get very comfortable. And so when something comes up, it comes and shakes up your world. And let's say it takes you a little minute to get back on your feet. Let's say you get laid off and you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to apply some other jobs and I'll get another job. And it may take you 5 months. It might take you a year. I know people who it took them a whole year to find another job, applying every day, multiple times a day. You know what I mean? You just never know how your path is going to unfold. And I feel like where we are right now in society is like, this is the most optimal time to like tap into some of those creative resources and to start to get creative and like how you can just create supplemental income, just kind of learn how to like, well, what other way can I create points of exchange? Sometimes it's monetary, sometimes it's service-based, sometimes it's product-based, but really I feel like we're coming into a reality. It's like we're going to have to start to step into some other kind of skill sets so that way we don't become so reliant and so dependent, and we can really like take back our power. I know I keep saying that, but it's like it just trickles out into so many different layers and levels. And I feel like what we're also kind of seeing being played out on a larger scale is like everyone is because we're all looking for the government, or we're all looking for this politician or this person over here to fix our collective issues, or to fix this collective issue, when long time ago we could have all been banding together and organizing and fixing our own issues if we really want to be really honest about it, but we're so indoctrinated to looking outside of ourselves and not realizing that that we as a people actually have more of the power than the people in power. But it's up to us to recognize that and to be able to perceive ourselves as being powerful. But you gotta be able to, have that level of awareness of like, oh, actually, if enough of us come together and we create another plan or put something else in place and we start to follow this, then that can essentially in a lot of different ways become new laws or new rules, new guidelines, new codes of conduct, if you will.
Absolutely. And you did talk about that a lot. I noticed that you echoed that power and the whole thing about bringing back power. Based off of your expertise and the clients that you've had, where does most people's power, like power is inner, do people give it up unwillingly, unknowingly? How do they describe it when you're sitting here trying to tell them to reclaim that power? Like, where does it go? Do we just are to give it up? Are we misled? Are we told that we're not powerful, so we just don't have any? Like, what's your experience with that?
I feel like it comes in. It's another one of those like really layered kind of modes of programming. It comes from childhood, it comes from adolescent years, it comes from young adult years, it comes from, and especially if, let's say, I would probably argue to say someone who was raised in a very like entrepreneurial, kind of family probably understands more of the power that they have than someone who was raised in like, well, you got to follow the rules and you got to play by the book and you got to do this and you got to do that. Because then, yes, all of your power is outsourced or resourced from an outside entity, identity, and outside somebody else is giving you something so that way you can be, right? Be happy, be whole, have money, be whatever, and so it threatens that perceived sense of safety when you're now reclaiming your power, because it is on you. It's always been on you, though. You've just outsourced it to someone else, and they tell you what to do and how to think and how to be. When you reclaim that for yourself, you're telling yourself how to think, how to be, and X, Y, and Z. What supports that and what supplements that and what cushions that is when you're tapping into a higher power, a higher realm, your soul, and you're getting that you've got a clear enough channel. So you've done enough healing to where you can hear your true self clear enough to take action and to get guidance and to be like, you know what, let me reach out to that one person that I met last year. Like something in my spirit is telling me to email them. Hey, Paul, X, Y, and Z, I was wondering if you need any help in your business. Actually, thank you so much. We just, our best person just got they quit, they got another opportunity. Would you be free to come by on Monday and you just never know, but you have to be clear enough to receive that guidance and that download. And you talked about fear. Fear is like the number one. Fear is the they call it the demon of the root chakra, right? Fear is what keeps us stuck in survival. If you are inundated with fear, you are going to keep on that same loop until you are blue in the face, until it's your last day, because you are so afraid to step outside of the circuitry that you've been taught and programmed to be in. But when you have enough trust, that's what alchemizes fear. Trust, inner trust in a higher power, trust in your path, trust in your purpose. And you start to take those steps and trust, and you get that feedback. Oh, okay, I trusted that piece of insight. It led me here. Okay, what's the next piece of wisdom I can get? What's the next, what's the next? You start to follow those breadcrumbs. That starts to show you a different reality. Now you start to reprogram yourself. You guys' podcast is your Deprogrammed podcast. You start to reprogram yourself of what's possible and what's true. And the thing about truth is that we all know it's relative, right? My truth is my truth. Your truth is your truth. Sure, they may be in alignment. There may be some overlap, but it's colored by your specific and unique experience in the world, just as mine is, right? And so when we're both open to hearing each other's truth, and it's not me trying to sit here and tell you, Arianna, that you need to believe in my truth because my truth is the right truth, like that's when we get what we got, instead of being like, actually, let me hear some of your truth. Let me see where there's some alignment. Maybe let me see where I actually may need to challenge myself to step outside of my own, little bubble of knowing and truth. And let me give Arianna a shot. Let me just see what she has to say. There might be something in there that I like. And there may not be anything in there that I like at all. But I'm going to listen. I'm going to be open to see if there's any wisdom that I can receive out of that. And that's, the next, I feel like one of the highest kind of realms that we start to get into when we're talking about really expanding our consciousness is being able to hear other people and listen to them. And I call it finding the God in everyone. There have been people who we do not have the same political, socioeconomic, we ain't got nothing, but I'm willing to listen and hear what this person has to say. And I'm listening, tuning in, and I'm filtering it out through my own personal belief. And some of my ideology is actually being expanded a little bit. And some of mine's actually being strengthened of no, I don't agree with that, but I know why now. Right. I've allowed myself to be met with enough opposition.
Allow the dialogue to happen. And
100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's just that flexibility, being able to be flexible is really important. That's how you can really learn and grow.
And you said when you said it, I me sharing the space, that word trust is a very, very hard word. And it comes back to a podcast I was also watching where people who are hurt, I say that a lot of people try to get through life consequence free. And obviously, parents, I am a mother. A great parent would always try to protect their children so that nothing harmful comes to them, they're protected at all costs all the time. And it's funny because when you look back at your own life, and when I look back at my own life as a mother, I'm like, wow, the person that I'm proud of being came from some of my most hurtful moments. The hurtful moments that I was allowed to alchemize. I allowed myself to do so because, again, I had to trust something. but the pain makes you distrustful. You distrust yourself, you distrust your friends, you distrust the person you love, you distrust your parents, you distrust your mentors. But it's so funny, and maybe you and Jason could tap into this as well. But I always notice that a mentor who is a true spiritual mentor would never take offense if you don't trust them. It's almost like they kind of know, like, I'm glad you don't, because now you're going to ask the questions. You're going to ask the questions like I'm normal. You're not going to look to me as some higher up, higher than now. It's just like, no, I don't want you to trust me. Ask me why to everything.
Yeah.
Challenge me.
You said that was you? Oh, challenge you. Yeah. I mean, like, that's how you cultivate strength. You know, is like having that, is being challenged. It's having a little bit of, you need enough friction, right? Just enough, a dash, not to be doused, but just a dash of friction. So that's how you create that. No, I'm going to push back on this. No, I'm not going to allow this to overcome me. I'm actually going to push back. And that's how you get your muscle. That's how you gain that trust muscle.
The training. Into building that muscle. A lot of us, I think we don't allow the pain that we experience to help us nurture that muscle. We instead allow it to hinder us and basically put us down. But it is a whole thing of, yes, you do start to get tolerant. Doesn't mean you have to allow it into your space, but then I realized that the more you practice that muscles, the less you take pain personal. Because they hear that from mentors and stuff as well, is that you start to like, your pain is you're not really doing this to hurt me. Like, you're experiencing it, and all you're doing is really just putting it on the next person who you feel like either maybe you're crying out loud to. If you have a certain fear, you can hear them. You can almost hear. And it goes back to reality, right? Like, your whole reality changes once you start to trust yourself more, allow yourself to feel the pain, the fear, all the stuff that you've been naturally to feel. And then you start building that muscle.
I think what's worse than pain being hurtful is the possibility of it just paralyzing you, period. I think when you just don't do anything after a bad experience. I teach kids arts education, and over the summer camp period, I had this one student who, we prepped her. I thought she was brilliant, to your singer songwriter background. She was emerging in that place. First time being in front of a microphone, recording, writing her thoughts down, getting songs together, song structure, the whole like. When it was time for her to perform, she froze. Which I understand, because again, it's her first time. My prayer is that, because she had that painful experience of freezing and feeling, didn't trust herself, really, that she doesn't let that kind of like have her stagnant, where it's just like, man, I don't ever want to have to feel that feeling again, but rather run towards it. Like, looking at it as like, I don't want this to stop me, that one experience, that one thing. And it's so applicable to everything. It's just like, hey man, I got my heart broken. I'm gonna stop. I didn't get the job that I always wanted. I guess I'm just gonna settle to do this. I'm gonna stop applying, or just settle in that way, So yeah, like, I guess we're both asking, like, how have you, in the experiences of dealing with clientele, or just even in your own experience, like, how did you overcome the fact that you needed to trust yourself more?
The first thing that came up, especially as you were sharing the story with your student here, was to find, so like in her case, I would find little moments where that same kind of feeling comes up. So it may not even be when she's about to go on stage and sing, right? It might be when her parent is yelling at her, or when the teacher scolds her and she has that moment to start to pay attention to, where else am I freezing in life? Where else do I get stuck like that? You got to pay attention to the really small micro moments, because that's what compounds up to the bigger moments, right? And so that's what I've had to do within my own reality is start in the safe spaces, essentially. So it's like, when it comes to safety, it's a fine line to toe, because you don't want the safety that is stagnating your growth, but you do want to be able to identify, where are my safe spaces? Where are the people that I could, especially as you were sharing that story about your student, I flashed to, I remember when I was, when I was like 15, I wanted to that's when I essentially got my spark of singing and acting, right? And one of my aunts, who was like just a dear friend of my mom, who I considered an aunt, she had gifted me one year these 2 monologue books. I had told her, we were talking on the phone or write each other. And I was like, yeah, I really want to get into acting and XYZ. So she gifted me for my birthday 2 acting books. And I studied them. I'd find the monologues I wanted to like recite, rehearse or whatever. And I would study them. And I started performing them. I remember I performed one like in front of my friend, and I was like over at her house with her family. And then I like did it in front of her family, So I like found little moments where I felt safe, and that I felt like, okay, if I messed up, it wouldn't be like, it doesn't feel so like, exactly, So it's like, you want to build up that tolerance, and then you just keep edging yourself out a little bit more. Okay, this time I'm going to ask, a whole group of my friends, like if I have a sleepover or something like that, or maybe I get all of us do it together and then we each pick them up. It's like just kind of start finding those little moments where you can keep, extending your level of discomfort around that. And especially if you really, especially if that student walked away and was like, okay, I know I froze, but like, I still really want this really, really bad. I want to figure out like, how can I get over my stage fright? I talked about earlier being an introvert. Man, I was that little kid that I'm pretty sure I had a solo in the church choir or something, and probably froze too. Right. And then had the nerve to turn around and want to be a singer. Like, what? So it's like, and I've had to come a long way with that. But you start in those little spaces where you're like, I want to go to open mic. Okay, well, everyone's there trying something new and something different. That's like one place that if you mess up, like no one's going to, that's the place where you go and mess up. You go to the open mic to mess up. Right. And so, and I say that, we're talking about singing and everything, but that's with everything. That's with everything. I don't care if you want to be a cook, a priest, whatever the case may be. You start wherever you are that just feels like, oh, let me just do this one little step. And for whatever reason, when we're adults, that little step, that's not good enough. We want to take 5 steps. We want to take 25 steps right now. I'm guilty of it. I know, but it's like, and I mentioned this earlier, we can't discredit those small steps, those small moments, that one client, that one person that purchased, if the one person that shows up to hear you sing, you hear how many singers, rappers, comedians, there was 3 people in the crowd, but I still gave a full on performance. Like it was a state, like a whole audience full of people. Because in those intimate, really vulnerable spaces, when you don't have all of the energy and the buzz and everything from the crowd, like you're cultivating that, and you're giving people an experience that they would never be able to get otherwise. And they're looking at you, well, how are you going to show up with this? And I feel like in our humanness, we automatically assume people are going to judge us. I deal with this too, of like, oh, if I wasn't able to get 20 people to sign up, they're going to judge me. They're going to think I'm a flop or a fraud or whatever. And that's just our own. And like, no one's thinking about that. Anything, they're so grateful that they have more time with you, that it's just you and them, because they feel like they can be vulnerable and they can fully show up. So it really comes down to like allowing our ego to step aside, especially if you're on a spiritual path. That ego is going to get crucified. First step. That's step number 1. Ego has got to take a back seat. You got to learn your place.
If listeners know anything about the Phoenix, you go through a couple of rebirths to fully aflame, fully on fire, and then you go right back to ash again. You come right back down, and then you get again. Yeah, life is all about the cycles and reframing and redoing and reevaluating, but it's like you said, it's just to have the fun in it, knowing that everyone's doing the same thing.
Yes.
Every community of the whole world, basically, like you said, other than the ones who just decide to stop. Like, hey, listen, I went through 20 of these cycles. I'm not going through 20 more. Like, I don't know about you two, but I know my older generation to be good for that. Where they'd be like, I'm too old for that. I'm too old to change. I'm too old. Leave me alone. Whatever. When I was 57, I stopped learning slang. I stopped listening to new music. I'm good where I am, and I'm good like I'm stuck in the 90s.
Stuck in the 90s. I mean, that's not a bad era to get stuck in. I love the 90s.
Someone will come up and be like, 90s, what about the 2000s? Listen here, young heads, okay? I know the great era, okay? No, but it's so true. Like, even just going through the cycles again and again, but knowing that that's a part of it, doing it, like you said, no one's judging you. Once we figure it out, we all look at each other like, wow, we're all going through the same thing here. We're all going through the same thing. So there's a little bit of me in everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And especially as creatives, I think that's why I feel so drawn, not only because I'm a creative, but I just know we are so highly sensitive, and the beauty of being a highly sensitive person and being highly empathic is that that's what makes us feel so much. That's what makes the art and the medicine so palpable and so potent, because we've transmuted that, we've translated it into something that's bigger and beyond us. And so that's why it's so important. And I'm constantly, wrestling with myself on this myself, of just like continue to expand and further my creative voice. So today I was actually reading about the throat chakra, because I know I'm like, there's some areas in my throat chakra that are closed off. I need to start taking a look at this, because it is starting to block my work. It is starting to block my flow. It is starting to create some dissonance in my reality, right? I want to be able to share my medicine and share my work, because that's what creates the resonance. That's what creates the community. If other people can read and see and feel it and experience it, they find resonance in it. That's what draws them in. That's what pulls them in. So if I'm stalling or blocking myself from that, then that's what's creating this perception of like, well, no one's purchasing my work, or this, that, and the third, all the stories that come into our head when we feel like, well, I wanted it to come out like X, Y, and Z, and it came out with A, B, and C, and I have to reconcile that. But it comes back to perception. Once again, it's like trusting that, okay, if 5 people were meant to purchase this the first round, then 5 people are meant to purchase it. And me and those 5 people, we about to have a time. I want to give them everything I got, because that's my duty. It's my duty to steward them as a soul guide, as someone that's there to support them in meeting a newer, different aspect of themselves. And they still deserve the same level of tenderness, care, attention, support as 20 people would, And also too, and I was gonna say, Arianna, I know you remember back in your church days, I think there's a scripture in the Bible that says, like, God doesn't give you more than you can handle.
Yes.
And so we got to really trust that, because the ego, we be thinking, well, I'm going to do 50. I'm going to do 50, 100, 1,000 people, but it's like, are you really, is your foundation, are your structure set up to hold that kind of energy? That we talk about exercising a muscle. That is a muscle that needs to be exercised and expanded and really built out to be solid, because this work is no joke. Even if you're a creator, you're like, you have people's emotionalities and their, I think music is such an important like medium. Like you're programming people. Like, that's powerful. You know what I mean? And so it's like, you want to make sure that the intention behind that and the words that you're saying and the energy that's being put into whatever your methodology is, whatever your medium is, that the intention, that the energy is clean and that it's clear, even if it's coming from a place of hurt and sadness. And, I've created things being at my lowest and depressed and all the things, but it's like, it's still that intention of like, I'm doing this as a means to connect with someone. I'm putting myself on this paper, on this song, on this whatever, as a way to relate to someone, to connect with them, just to let them know that I see you, I hear you, I feel you, I am you. I've been there. And so I think it's really important that we steward our work, whatever our calling is, whatever our passions are, we steward that with that level of awareness and consciousness.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I appreciate you saying that. I think, not even just speaking for myself, because I'm a creative, but I think any type of artistic piece, for those who are really intentional about that, my philosophy has always been this. And I've told Ari this multiple times. My main drive to be very good or elite at what I do is really to make sure that the people listening really feel what I'm saying. Not even just because I want them to feel what I'm saying, but maybe they can see themselves in the music, in the art, in the visual, because if it's one thing music has done for me, it has definitely carried me through some really terrible times, you know? It has been a comfort, it has been a healer, it has been so a solace, you know, so being entrusted with the gift to create something like that, I wanted to make sure that I'm passing it on as effectively as it's been effectively passed on to me, you know? So I appreciate you saying that. But I did have a question going back to what you were saying before, as far as there's one thing you said. I don't know why I'm losing it right now. Oh yeah, I remember now. It is the whole idea of, do you battle imposter syndrome in the sense of when you know what your purpose is and you're aligned with your purpose and quick fun. When you're aligned,
you can kind of play impossible.
right. When you're aligned with your purpose, right? And then you're like, I did all this work. I came this way. I tried to be a leader in my field, and maybe I didn't move the amount of books I was supposed to move, or what you thought you were supposed to move, or you weren't as effective in terms of the numbers were concerned. Do you find, because you mentioned something about, you know, battles and the times where you might freeze or the times where you might be hampered, is that something that you personally struggle with at times? And if it's not that, what would it be for you?
Yeah, no, I definitely struggle with that at times. I feel like, you know, when you're being called to like meet that next level, there's always this, because that's the beauty about spirit and source. They already know like what you're capable of. They already know your highest potential. And we do too. We've seen visions. We've seen glimpses of like, oh, I see myself doing this. Oh, I see myself doing that. But we do it in this very passive, like maybe one day. But then when spirit's like, okay, well, how about you start that next week? We're like, well, next week? Like, you know, like, what happened? Yeah. So it's like, it's about next decade. It's about, again, trusting that path and that journey. And I remember when I first started my business, I was calling myself a creative wellness guide. This zero clients, zero, nothing. We just started. We just got here, you know? But that's what spirit told me. That's what you are right now, a creative wellness guide. And then it changed to intuitive guide. And now it's, you know, an energetic medicine educator. Now it's, you know, spirit. A couple months ago, spirit was like, you need to add writer to your bio. Okay, let me add writer. And now I'm starting to see like, yeah, I've been writing for a long time. I've been writing since I was about 7. I write poetry. I write for Instagram and emails and newsletters. But there's like this, again, going back to the societal validation is like, well, you didn't study writing in college. You know, you didn't, you know, you haven't had a job as a writer. It's like, can you call yourself a writer? You know, and it's like, well, I don't need anybody to validate me. Like, I already know this is something that I do, whether anyone else has seen it or not. This is already something I've been in practice with. And so that actually goes back to what we were talking about earlier with with reinventing yourself. I taught a workshop last fall called The Medicine in Reinventing Yourself. And one of the phases in that process of like, what does reinvention look like? I shared 3 phases that people can go through. The first phase is grief as gatekeeper. So like really looking at your grief, really looking at the aspects of places in yourself where, like you were saying, Jason, like, well, I came out the gate, I wanted to sell, 20 books and I only sold 2 books. Well, okay. You sold 2 books, so that's going to come back around later when you go to sell the next batch of books. You're like, well, I sold 2. I know I can probably sell 2 more, and then maybe we can double it. Maybe we can triple it. You know what I mean? But it's like, it's being able to honor and recognize that even though you didn't hit your mark, you still got the experience. You still got that muscle memory, as I like to call it. We still know that we were able to accomplish something. And so we allow that to give us enough juice to try again and to try again. And maybe I try something a little bit different. Maybe I do the same thing and I double down, I go harder, but it's really looking at all those little pieces. And that's what reminds us, even if it's in a different area. I think about when I remind myself of like, girl, you've sold things before. Like, you have to do a lot of sales and business, right? You're selling your business, you're selling your products, your courses, whatever, you're coaching. And I was like, I had to remind myself, going back to that grief as gatekeeper. The other part of grief that I found so interesting when I was building out this workshop and I was channeling this medicine, Spirit was like, when you don't celebrate yourself for what you did do, so what? You didn't get 20 books, but you sold 2. There are people out here been writing 10 years, ain't sold no book. You know what I mean? It's like but you got 2 books. You did that. You sold 2 books. It's like, we got to celebrate that.
Put a book out, period.
Yeah, because
or don't put a book out, period. It's just in their body, in their system, just creating so much toxicity because they haven't allowed themselves to get that energy out. Right. And so this is where we get to go back into our reality. We get to go back into our history and look at, okay, so I was selling gift wrapping paper. I sold Coke products. I've sold like popcorn in a can. I've sold I can sell. Like, I can sell things, but it's like, that was in middle school, whatever. You know what I mean? But no one told me that I had to do that. Like, that was on my own volition. I wanted to get the prize. I wanted to sell 20 products so I can get the trip to X, Y, and Z and whatever. That was just my own sense of curiosity. So where did that go? What happened to it? And so that's, again, going back to that inner child work is, that's why this is why I feel like, in the Bible, they're talking about having the spirit of a child, having that the mind of a child, having that sense of wonder. Because children, they don't have fear about stuff like that. Like, the second the fundraiser came to the schools and we're doing a fundraiser, I was like, bet, what's the prizes? Because I'm doing it. It wasn't like, I'm afraid. And what if child out there knocking on everybody's door in my neighborhood? Hi, we're selling 20 cases of Coke products that were fundraised for my school. And these are the prizes that I get to get. Like, would you like to buy a case of Coke? What happened to that fearlessness? Where did it go?
You brought something that's very interesting. Maybe this is a theory that I'm just thinking as you're talking.
Mm-hmm.
And being a parent, it's like you teach your kids, or you try to teach your kids responsible fears. Like, hey, listen, fear going outside alone, fear going outside in the dark, fear the street, fear traffic, fear a stranger. But if you don't, and the way I'm just kind of verbalizing it now is that fear, if it doesn't know a specific definition, can bleed. Is what I'm thinking in my head. It's like, oh, well, my mom taught me fear is a tool to actually keep me safe. So maybe as an adult, sometimes we translate that fear to like, well, maybe I didn't put out the book because I'm scared. And the way I keep myself safe is by not doing that. Or go out and speak publicly, because the way I keep myself safe is by not speaking and by keeping in my room. And if we don't know that the fears that maybe our parents, our communities instilled in us to make us more safe or make us more aware of our situations or in the world that we live in, it can bleed into things that hold us back because it's the same emotion. It's feeding off the same thing. But that was just a theory that I was thinking of, because I was just like, yeah, why do kids go from fearlessness to fear? And it's because of us. They go from fearless to fear because of the adults around them, because I teach my kids all the time, fear electricity, fear the outlet, fear fire, fear these things, because it's going to keep you safe, right?
Yeah.
Oh, do I want this fear to completely, like you said, paralyze you? Absolutely not. In fact, you go and make fire. You go and make it. You go and make a campfire. You create. You put up an electrical pole. Be an electrician. Like, don't let fear. It's only as children that's the way that we have to teach them or verbalize it to them, because it's just like, well, it's only so much you can actually interpret. There's only so much that you can actually analyze. Because that's my theory. My theory that children remember and know everything. They're the purest ones of us. They are directly tapped into sources where their creativity knows no bounds. And as we get older, again, it's just us keeping safe. It's the survival thing. It's the, well, you have to make sure that you get to a certain age. That's also society. We have to make sure that you get to a goal. You have to make sure that you are a responsible citizen, that people think that you're accountable and that you're dependable. And then all of a sudden, you're just, like you said, you're in that box. But I guess the reprieve of that would be that we do it out of good intent. And I guess the children that ever come back to their parents or to their elders can always just ask a question, because we know that in them being taught those things, we don't want them to feel limited. It's just like, there's a reason why. And we just have to wait until you're older for us to explain, no, baby, I never wanted you to fear these things. It was for your safety. It was for your protection, for your well-being.
And even as you mentioned, elders and stuff like that, the communication aspect, I think one thing that destroys fear is understanding. Like you made an analogy as far as like the fire is concerned. It's like, I don't want you to fear fire, I want you to make fire. Okay, let's understand what fire is. This is what fire does. This is positive, and this is what fire does. It's negative. And kind of like building them and understanding that these are the components of things. It's like, you know, for parents, one of the most humbling and most scary conversations to have with your kids is about sex. It's like, hey, you know,
the act of making another one,
right?
Making another one of us,
right? Exactly. But if you, and this is where trust comes in, where, you know, you sit that person down when they're old enough and you give them a breakdown of it as far as what the pros are and the cons are. It kind of like, because here's the thing about being scared of stuff, you can scare yourself into doing something still dumb.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, but I feel like if you give kids the weapons of understanding and comprehension and balance of like, hey, not saying it's not, the mistakes ain't going to happen, but at least you equip them with some sort of knowledge. Because a lot of times, you know, what's a kid's number one question? Why?
Why is such a, I think that
go outside.
That might be the only difference that has us different from all the other animal kingdoms to me. Is that we ask other questions. Other animals, I realize, and other beings of life don't question. They just do.
They don't have the consciousness to.
Yeah, right. But we sit here and we ask why to everything. Why the plant? Why green? Why not red? Why not blue? Why not air? Why not water? Like we, and the only thing we can do, I think, to even go back to your point, is be very careful if we speckle that of each other.
Yeah, because community often is like, don't ask me why, just do it.
Agenda.
Yeah.
And then they ask why from the wrong people.
The question of people, you know? Don't have you ask why, because then you go to power dynamic. Because why is power?
Yeah.
Why I get the answer is power. And I did want to go back to one thing as one of our closing points here, because I did want to mention your course and how your school is going.
Yes.
Cool. So before we come up here, I noticed that we all touched on in some way God, sword, universe. How important is it that people trust not only in themselves, but in a higher power or a creator?
I think it's really important, to be honest. I feel like, and here's the thing, because like I unravel this. I've been listening to Neville Goddard. I know I've sent you some of his discussions and talks. Yeah. And you know, he talks about God in a couple of ways. Like, actually, I take it back. I feel like he talks about God in one core way, but there's like nuances to it. And so he talks about God being our imagination and our capacity and ability to be able to create our reality. And I have found that so interesting because actually, ironic that I'm about to share this story because it was your mom's husband at the time who asked me what my New Year's resolution was for 2019. And I told him I wanted to take God out of a box. I was like, I want to take God out of a box. I want to figure out like who God really is. What really is God outside of this? Like, I know I've been taught that, you know, God is out there and.
But I got chills underneath my.
Did you?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, because I just felt like I have been told this story of it just never aligned with me. I was like, well, what kind of God is this where I can't be my whole authentic self and my authenticity? So much of my authenticity is a sin. I was like, that doesn't even make sense to me. Like, why would God even create me in that way? You know, that I can't be myself. I have to follow this other teaching and principles and indoctrination to a T in order to be safe and secure. And like, you know, I was like, that's just so wild that God wants us all to be the same. Like, I don't understand. And so that I just could never really quite connect all the way to that version of God. But I was like, but I do believe in a higher power. And I believe in elements of the Bible. I believe in elements of a lot of different spiritual texts because I understand. And, you know, and you, I can never remember the name of the documentary, but I remember like you sent me a documentary way back in the day that was like conspiracy, like 101. Like it was like,
I think it was, I know it. And it just slipped my mind too, but it was a Netflix documentary. Yeah.
It was on YouTube. It might be on Netflix now, but I remember it was on YouTube.
Oh, man, I really want to remember.
But everything that documentary is saying was like, yeah, I believe that. I believe that. I believe that the origin story of Jesus is probably way older than what we think it is. And it's patterned after all these other spiritualities and ancient spiritual texts. And yes, I was like, all this makes sense to me. And so I started like just trusting that of like, if it makes sense to me, if there's like an unlocking in my body, like I can breathe a little bit more, I stand up a little bit straighter.
Yes, your power.
Yeah.
Up when you did that.
Something about this is true. It has to be. Why does it feel so true? And so I stopped questioning that and I started trusting it. And I started believing it. If my body feels like it can breathe a little bit easier, knowing this now, something about my spirit believes that this is true. And so that's when I was talking about, you know, truth and wholeness. Like that's for me, that's another piece of myself that just came back to me. You know, I know you talk about memory and remembering. That's exactly what it feels like. It's just like, yeah, I know that.
Yeah,
I trust that. I get to trust that. You know, so I believe. Yeah, I believe in God. I believe in the universe, source, the creator, the earth. To me, all of it is the same. The stars, moons, the trees outside, all of that is God. You know, you two sitting in front of me, there's God flowing, moving through you. Like there's God in people that you feel like ain't no God up in him. There's God somewhere. You know, even if it's God's opposite, you know, which, you know, if we want to call that evil or whatever, that's still, you know, we really want to get deep with it. That's still an aspect of God. Like just, you know, it is
saying a lot of things to where that's why I got the goosebumps, because we were laughing because JJ knows that I have a friend that we always joke about the conditions of dating. And then I was like, hey, listen, just put what you want in your partner and then take God out of your box. So the fact that you said that gave me chills, because just like throughout the last couple of weeks, I was saying, we don't realize how much we put the creator in a box. I feel like as humans, we chose like not only this life, but this design of a being.
Yes.
And then God is everything and a human being. So when you sit here and you're like, wow, I'm just giving you the metrics of what I think all this is, but you can give me so much more. You can give me stuff I can't even imagine. Why would I put something that's so limitless into my limited perspective? And it makes a lot of sense with what you were saying. I know that I study Gnostic teachings, and Gnostics is old. We're talking maybe 500 to 1000 BC. And it talks about that. It talks about how actually in the Bible, there's a religion that thinks that the God of the Bible is a lesser God, because he came off with like all the human jealousies and stuff like that. But the God that made that God basically is basically ether. It's like it's everything. It's the cosmos. And Sophia removed herself, and she was divine feminine. And in divine feminine came material, and material was the masculine. And I think it's very interesting when you talk about just the way that you talk about source and source being everything, because that's a very Gnostic teaching. Gnostic teaching also believes that we don't not know anything. We know everything. We're just trying to remember. And we chose this life to remember certain things that would serve our purpose in this life. So I think it's not only powerful, but even when people say belief in truth, I think there's power to words. I think you and Jason echoed on that when you talk about music, right? We learn music, even if you go back to older days, as chants and spells and, you know, like you said, incantations and hypnosis. And words are so powerful, because even when we talk about belief, and I believe in this, even in some of the stuff that I talk about where me and you echo and share the same sentiments on, I say, know the power of your words. You don't believe it, you know it. You believe it, you remember it. And now that you remember it, reclaim it. Like there's a lot of power in what we're saying with belief. So even when me, you, and Jason kind of echo this whole thing of source, I think that's humanity just remembering, like, yeah, we were created. We were created. That is a truth that we can all stand on. Like, oh, so if there's a creator and they created me, then that must mean they love me. That must mean I'm something, right? And to go back, like you said, to just the design of it, or how Jason was playing with me with the design of it, but also find the God. God is in everything. So you can pin that part, and everything, like you say, even the people who you don't even think, no one, everyone. And I'm sure we all have personal experience, but everyone has given up on them. And then you wonder, like, why are you friends with them? And why did you love them? And why did something? Because I saw the God in them. I saw the God in them when no one else didn't. And that is God. God is just using me to just tell that person for one more time, I'm still around. I'm still around. I ain't give up on you because one person said hi. One person acknowledged you. One person said, hey, listen, how are you feeling? Mm-hmm. And like you said, it's the little things. The little things we discredit so much now. And in the world of media, you and Jason echoed again about the metrics. And I'm so glad, Mickey, that you, or Amickoleh, that you said, I'm going to put that over. I'm so glad, Amickoleh, that you talked about how just that one person that makes a difference, the one person that you could influence, the one person that might come and ask you, like, and say, hey, listen, like, I really, and you can tell that person when they're in your life, it's like, they really hang on a lot of stuff I say.
Yeah.
They really. And then it makes you almost, when you know you're in that position, like, oh my gosh, like I better really know what I'm saying because they're really hanging on me for this. And just that one person, your purpose could be done in that. Your purpose in life could have been for that one person, but we live in such a metric heavy, data driven world now.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, one person's not enough. Like you said, we have to have the 10 million or the 100,000 or the 50,000. No, that one person will ripple like we just talked about with the tree and the roots.
Yeah. Because if you treat one person like 10,000 people, when you get to 10,000 people, you're going to, the level of gratitude and understanding of what you are stewarding is so much more as opposed to the ego, just wanting the metrics because that's going to show people that I can do this, that, and the third. Spirit is going to break that all down because it needs you whole and pure and detached. Yes. If you are too attached to the numbers and to the performative aspect of your purpose and your calling, it's not going to hit and resonate as if you being there as a vessel, I'm not sure why I'm saying this, but Spirit needs me to tell you this and I'm willing to share it. It's da 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 da. My ego's not attached to it. I'm not going to, I don't know if I don't want them to judge me. Think, nope, this is what they need to hear. I'm saying it, and when you're,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Performance so powerful because when you live in your purpose and people know purpose is, you cannot afford to be performative with purpose.
No.
Purpose will run you through the washer, the dryer, put you through the dishwasher, take you back out again, ring you up, and then be like,
"How you already know."
It's like because if you think you're gonna be performative and purpose, someone will catch you slipping. There's gonna be that one day where you're just like, I know I'm doing what I love to do, but they annoy me, and it's like, and you didn't tell them. Yeah. You didn't like let that come out a little bit, like, man, sometimes this is really draining. So now when that one cameraman get on you and you start snapping, they be like, oh my God, who is this person? It's like, no, I was always there, but you guys only like me for this, or you guys only like me for that. It's like, no.
You'll compromise purpose being performative.
Yes.
Yes.
It's just like, if it's ain't nobody taking that away from you. Ain't nobody taking away from you. You will go
and that's
down. Being viral,
100%.
Nobody, to being kind of in between, to not being nothing again, and still be able to at least say when you close your eyes at night, then I'm happy. Yeah.
Because you'll do anything for the performance of it. You'll compromise everything.
Yes.
It's like to the point where it's like somebody who got on Reels to do a certain thing, and then they realize, oh, my reel isn't working, but if I do this,
feed into the algorithm.
And then it's like, but
that's not you.
It's not nowhere near.
And it's unsustainable. And that's why, I mentioned earlier that authenticity piece is so important. And I do my best to show up authentically in everything I do, because that's what's that's how I'm going to show up the most whole, the most organic, the most like have a conversation like this. Like I want to just be able to just show up in my authenticity. I don't care where I'm at, because I know that's going to be the most like, I'm going to share and channel the most like cleanest, clearest version of myself. Yes. And the most download and the fear and all of that. And the nervousness. And, I don't want to say the wrong thing. And, and I don't want to, like, all that is no longer a part of the picture. Cause that's how I used to show up. Like I just show up to be perceived as someone who's likable or agreeable or this. Like I want to make sure that I don't, rub anybody the wrong way, and just trying to like, and again, just putting myself so much in a box and conforming and bending over backwards and doing all these acrobats and gymnastics.
Looking at us, girl.
And
don't y'all know y'all?
And miserable, soul, just like not myself. And that's not what
No, and I think it's a beautiful thing that we have people like you in the world who are helping people come to light with that. Authenticity is such a powerful thing. It's a thing that I feel like everyone, and maybe that's what we see in kids too. We see them in their authentic selves because there's no definition. They're not
Yeah.
holding any. So they don't know. What was the example that came up the other day? Oh, about who approaches who, the girl or the boy. And it's like in kids, you don't see that. You see the girl say, "Hey, listen, I like you," but then scurrying away, blushing. You see the guy send the flower, and then they go away blushing. They don't care about who. They just care that their feelings get known. That's it.
Yes.
Or they'll come and ask an adult, and they'll be like, "I have a crush on her. What should I do?" And you're just sitting there like, "Aw." And then maybe in the back of your head, like, "Man, even I don't have the courage to go tell my adult crush that I really do like her or like him or whatever." But kids just do it like they look to you. What should I do? It's like, don't ask me. I can't even confess yet. So don't. No,
I'm
it's
still working it out with fear and trepidation.
but yeah, it's just even the authenticity piece. Like we talk there's so many powerful concepts here, Amickoleh, and I just want to say thank you so much for extending your hand. Thank you for gracing us with your presence, with your intellect, with your expertise. I think everyone's in good hands. Any one of your clients, nothing but prosperity and blessings and abundance on you. Yeah. And we know clients, humanity, they're in great hands with you. And I pray that everything that you can tell you genuinely care. And I think that's very important when we acknowledge those of us who genuinely care about our purpose and what we give to humanity, because it's so selfless. We already know the sacrifice that it takes. No, money doesn't guarantee. Money is not guaranteed. Security is not guaranteed. Virality is not guaranteed. None of the metrics that might make this life easier is guaranteed to people who live purpose. But it's such a selfless act because once you know it, you know that you have to do it. You know that's what you were made for, and you can tell you embody it through and through. So, Amickoleh Imani, we just want to say thank you again coming on so much. You have officially joined your Deprogrammed, and we hope our listeners got a little bit of deprogramming themselves.
Yes.
Deprogram with you. And as we close up, please tell us about the school. So on the CUSP Wellness.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. So I am officially turning my business into a school. I've been working on it this past week. And the more I like portal into this formatting of it being a school, like the more excited and the more lit up, I'm like, this is what it's supposed to be. This is how it's supposed to be like how it's supposed to be facilitated, this work. And it's been so interesting because the past couple of months I've been hosting so many workshops and this, that, and the third. And the past few years I've hosted workshops and courses, and all of it's now being held within this container, my school, which is called On the Cusp Wellness, and keeping it the same name as my business. But once you get into there, I'm building it on Circle, the platform. Once you get into there, there's going to be two pathways essentially. So the first pathway, which is going to host like a couple of workshops and meditation, is going to be called The Threshold. And that's the space for the people who are the in-between space. They're at that crossroad, right? They're meeting themselves at this fork on the road, this like very pivotal kind of point in their lives where they are getting to decide, like, do I stay with the okie doke, or do I start to tap into something that I'm feeling called to go into that's a bit deeper, that's a bit more in tune with my soul, that's more in tune with like what I truly desire in the deepest parts of my heart, and really supporting them through that exploration and that journey, because it is a journey. And so that's called The Threshold. And then the second space is called, that's a free space. The second space is called The Sanctuary. So that is going to be the community for all of my course members inside of Activate Your Soul, which we're relaunching September 9th. It's going to be our first class, so September 9th. And so that's for anyone who joins. What'd you say?
We had to mark that down.
Oh, yes. As for anyone who joins the course, they'll have access to the sanctuary community. So that's where I like, that's the space I want to do, like moon circles and like have office hours and really like just even more in-depth support and guidance for the members of that space, and really just like facilitating really beautiful conversations, exchanges, spaces where they can really tap into their emotionality. Because that's another thing, and you and I have talked about this, Arianna, that's another thing that I've recognized not only within my own personal journey, but most people people, like, going into those deep emotional traumas, those deep emotional pain points for them, within themselves, is not a lot of people have done that work, right? And so I feel like it is definitely best to be done in community, to be done at the very least with a guide or a coach or someone else who can hold you through while you're kind of unwrapping, unfolding all this emotional trauma, but also then rebuilding yourself emotionally from a safe space. So that's what the work that we're going to be doing inside the sanctuary. So that way, it makes tapping into your authenticity, that self-expression piece, following your soul more, following the uniqueness of our soul's purpose. I always emphasize that because all of our purposes are so different, even if there may have some similarities, right, or alignment, we still have our own unique purpose. And so those are the people that I want to help inside of the sanctuary. But if you're kind of feeling like, I'm not really ready to go all in just yet, I'm kind of figuring some things out, you can join the Threshold. And that's where I have my workshop, The Medicine of Reinventing Yourself. That's going to be turned into a course. I have a free meditation in there. Just a couple of things that will support you while you're in the in between space before you really, step on over here into the soul path, into the soul lane.
I don't know why I heard make your soul glow.
Hey, there you go. Come on now.
Yeah, I love that. That's incredible.
That's what we want to do. We want to make your soul.
Oh, yes.
Without.
But no, that's incredible. And again, please let us know how Jason and I can support you.
Will do. As soon as it's live, I'll send it your way. Boom.
Sit here and market. That's one thing I know that Deprogrammed does, is that we'll sit there and have you on the story for like 3 months. Like, it's just, come on, let's go. Come on.
I love that. That's amazing.
But yeah, no,
yes.
really.
Yes. There's one more thing I want to add that came up in our conversation. We were talking about creativity, and I think you said spark, or maybe you said spark, Jason. But that's like one of my values is to inspire people. So when anytime anyone says, "Oh my God, that was so inspired me," or I find you to be really inspiring, or you inspired me, or that was inspiring, whatever. Anytime they use that word, I'm like, cool, on purpose. Like, because there's so much inspiration breeds action, even if it's just for them to go Google an article, even if it's just for them to go listen to a podcast episode, that's action. We don't know where that action is going to take them, but it just seeded something into their spirit. So I don't take inspiration lightly at all. That spark, that flame, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, that's like one of my deepest goals and values. And I feel like that's something that you all are doing here on this space. That's something I know I strive towards doing, because that's how we can really shift culture and shift the reality that we're seeing. It's just inspiring people that they can live a different reality, that they can create something unique and different for themselves, whatever vision they see that they have for themselves, that if they follow it and trust it and just continue to let that path unfold for them, and find the community that's going to support you and uplift you when times get challenging and difficult, that it's going to be worth following. It's going to be worth exploring. So that's just my final note out.
Love that. And again, I'm sure that you inspired. Listen, I'm inspired. I feel like I want to go do 1,000 things after we're done here. And one of your other last things was rest. So I'm going to work a little bit, but I'm definitely going to get some.
Yes. both of you, please.
Amickoleh Imani, again, thank you so much. And please let the people know where they can find you. What are your handles, social medias?
Yes, you can find me on Instagram at On the Cusp Wellness. I do have a TikTok underneath my name, Amickoleh Imani. I actually have an Instagram account. My photography and some of like my art and stuff is on at Amickoleh Imani as well. That's something I want to continue to build out and tap into more this year. But yeah, you can follow me at either one of those spaces. If you go on my Instagram, On the Cusp Wellness, I have a link tree there. You can find all kind of like offerings and articles, things that I've written, places I've been featured, things that I'm offering in that space as well as a little link to my Substack. I'm going to be shifting my newsletters over into Substack. So that's going to be something really fun. But the link to sign up is in that link tree. So yeah.
That is great. As a active subscriber. So I sit here and I look and I'm like, yeah, I've never really thought about myself like that. I never really asked that question. Let me journal prompt. Because you be the only one that be reminding me to journal prompt sometimes. I'm like, yeah, I don't write enough. But no.
I've always got some questions in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And Amickoleh Imani, everyone, thank you so much for joining your Deprogrammed podcast.
Thank you.
best in all your future endeavors, all the success, all the abundance, all the prosperity, and all the productivity that you will need. And again, this has been your Deprogrammed podcast, and I am Arianna Apparicio, aka Coach Apparicio.
Jason Andrabas, aka Conquest. See you until next time. Stay tuned for your regularly scheduled
Deprogramming. We told Mickey what's gonna mess our ways. We're gonna say the fucking.
Peace.
Peace, guys. Later.